Hello and welcome to the Philippines. Today's topic, taxi costs and driving in the Philippines. And of course, many of you who've been here for a while, you know that I've spent much of my time in Cebu City, Cebu, the Philippines. So a lot of it will be centered around that, but also from various sites and information I've gotten from other expats. There's a Chinese restaurant, looks like it is closed permanently. Down by Robinson's Mall. This is a taxi ride from uptown Cebu City, Mango Square area, over to Mactan. So anyway, I'll use this video and point out a few things along the way and talk a little bit about driving and taxi costs. This is the big Galleria, new Robinson's Galleria Mall up here, and the Summit Hotel Galleria, and there's a Summit Hotel on Fuentios Minya Circle, large traffic circle up in the uptown area as well. And my friend prefers to stay at the older one. He says you get bigger rooms for a little bit better price. Anyway, I think this is the newest mall in Cebu City, Robinson's Galleria. Interesting architecture and interesting shops inside as well. And we're going along. Here's the pier area down here where they unload the container ships off the ships. Anyway, let's get to the taxis first. You arrive at the airport, and a number of things have changed since I came here in 2015. Now here's another busy intersection with no traffic controls. Occasionally they'll have a traffic enforcer standing out there in the middle trying to direct traffic a little bit, but it seems to flow. It seems to flow naturally, and you don't see too many accidents out here. They give way. They let one side go for a while, and then the other side goes for a while. But anyway, when you arrive at the airport, you have a number of options, and I will talk a little bit about Manila, what I know about it here in a bit as well. Here in Cebu City, you have white taxis, you've got yellow taxis, and you've got black taxis. The white taxis are your average everyday taxi to get around town. The yellow taxis are airport taxis. Now their mission every day is to deliver their passenger and get back to the airport, pick up more passengers. Of course, now with very few passengers, they don't have much work to do. I very rarely see a yellow taxi out there during this present crisis because there are very few flights, and those OFWs, overseas Filipino workers, who are flying in probably aren't going to pay for an airport taxi. And the black taxis are more your executive type taxis that will, in fact, they often hang out at the nicer hotels and to ferry passengers around, even take you on a longer trip if you want to go across the island to some resorts or Oslo to see whale watching, something like that. My experience with taxis in Cebu City has been excellent, very, very excellent. They are very honest. They almost inevitably turn on the meter. Only a couple times have I had to ask them to turn the meter on. A couple times during a rush hour, during a festival, they tried to quote me a high price, and I just went on to the next one. Another guy, when I got off at Pier 1, got off of a ferry, so there's lots of customers coming out, and there's some that kind of hang out in that, get in a line down by that ferry area. He quoted me a high price, and I said, no, turn on the meter, I'll find another one. And he did. And he was a friendly fella, and I ended up tipping him also. And that brings up another topic. What about tips? It's up to you. I generally round up a bit, unless if they've got some. Occasionally, I have to ask them to turn their radio down. They've got the radio going very, very loud, and hello there. Everybody sees the camera. If they don't really turn it down or change the channel, if that's my request, something like that, then I might not tip them. But anyway, as far as the cost, from the airport to uptown, up around Ayala Mall, let's say, or the Fuentes Mina Circle, my cost from the airport is probably would average 300 to 400 pesos, six to eight U.S. dollars at 50 pesos to the U.S. dollar. You should be able to go almost anywhere in the Cebu, Mandaue City, Lapu-Lapu on Mactan Island for less than 500 pesos. Now the yellow taxi, because oftentimes they don't have return trips, they go right back to the airport. Their meter starts more, and they're generally about twice as much, is my understanding. That hotel there is Crown Regency on Mactan Island. I visited there, done a video about that. For those of you who don't know or new to the channel, I've got over 1,000 videos in the past 6 years. Do a lot of videos about condominiums, renting them, costs, do walkthroughs, some real estate buying, a lot of cost of living, a little bit of travel to various islands, various cities. And if you could hit that like button, that certainly helps the algorithms to promote the channel. Hit the don't like button. That also helps promote the channel. The fact that you're interacting. I have heard of very few bad stories about taxis in the Cebu City metropolitan area. I have had it happen once where we took down in South Road Properties, we took a very short trip south from SM Mall Seaside, just a little ways down there to an area where he probably wasn't going to be able to pick up passengers, and he asked for a little bit more money. And that's been a while back. I forget, I paid him a little bit extra. But if it's a one-way ride and they got to go back, they aren't going to find passengers. It doesn't bother me to pay a little bit more, but the price listed on the meter is the price that you need to pay anyway. Now, as far as Manila, I have heard more horror stories, call it that, of taxis at the airport who quote you very, very high prices, or once you get in, they got the meter running, but they take a very circuitous route to where you want to go. I have not experienced that. So if those of you who have, if you can make comments in the comment section, let us know. I have read comments on a number of travel sites, and some people say, well, use a Grab app and get a Grab car. You do have Grab here, Grab car. You used to have Uber, but they were, I think they didn't meet some requirements or something. They were finally bought out by Grab. There is one or two other companies looking at operating in this area. There are motorbike taxis you can get. But if you're going to have luggage, you probably aren't going to take one of those. There are also buses available. There are a number of buses that cater to the airport now and around the city, and that's because of this past crisis for 18 months. The transportation system has changed and continues to change. So even the sites that tried to give information out on schedules and such, I think they've all just pretty much given up, because you never know from one day to the next, 1 week to the next, what buses are running where, when they're going to run. They have gotten rid of a lot of jeepneys, polluting jeepneys. Most of the jeepneys you see out there are no longer the ones belching out the black smoke, but they have been, at least they meet some minimal pollution requirements. There are quite a few newer, cleaner buses out there, smaller buses, larger buses, that are making their way around the city in different parts of Cebu province. What else can I tell you about taxis? I think they're allowed generally, if you've got 5 people, they'll probably require you to jump into 2 different taxis. I think they're only supposed to take 3 passengers top, I think. They do have some larger taxis where if you've got a lot of luggage, you can order those. They had an app called MyCab, M-I-C-A-B, I believe, but I don't think it's in operation anymore. Where you could try to book a cab, but a lot of the taxi drivers told me, oh, it cost me 80 pesos a day to pay for the load for that thing to operate for me to get them, and then half the time the pickup destination is nowhere near where I'm at. So a lot of them were not using that. Didn't care for it. They'd rather just drive around, pick up a passenger. Now to get a cab, you basically just stand by the side of the road and you wave your hand when you see a taxi coming. And a lot of times they'll flash their lights if they're, in fact, if you're standing there and not waving, they might flash their lights and say, "Hey, you want to ride?" Or they might honk at you, say, to see if you want to ride. Try to get your attention. Now, if you decide to drive here, if you have a vehicle, you can rent a vehicle here. There are a number of rental companies and more coming online. There's some at the airport. I have seen some of the costs, but I'm not going to give generalizations here because they could change based on a number of things. But I was told by a rental agency at the mall. In fact, they had a little stand set up that you should reserve it at least 2 days in advance, so we can schedule the car to be where you want it to pick up at SM Mall or wherever. So that's a bit unusual, I guess. But I guess they're having those problems in the U.S. too, because during this big crisis, the rental car companies sold off a lot of their cars. And now as the economy's coming back, and there's a shortage of cars in the U.S., new cars, because of the electronics, the digital electronics aren't coming in as they should be. There's a shortage of chips, and so now there's a backlog of buyers for cars, new and used. But getting back to the buses, there's my bus that comes out of there and has a couple destinations from the airport. Costs very little, anywhere from maybe 40 pesos on up, about 80 US. I believe that may have gone up. So a lot of the jeepneys transportation prices have gone up just a little bit because of this crisis that we've had for 18 months. Now driving, I understand that your foreign license in most cases is good for 90 days in the Philippines. That's the present law. Could change, so always check with the latest regulations. You definitely need to understand, exclamation point, that the rules over here, what the rules on the books are, what the laws are on the books for traffic, the way you've learned to drive, and reality over here in much of the Philippines are not anywhere similar at all. And you will find that lane lines are just a suggestion. You will find that where there is 2 lanes, they will make 3 or 4 lanes. Motorbikes will run between the lanes. They'll be running on the sidewalk and on the curb area. And so you really have to be vigilant. Kids and animals will be darting in and out of traffic. So you really need to be careful, because if you have an accident, that's an issue you don't want to get involved in, I'm quite certain. One nice thing about the Philippines is that you will find much less road rage. Now there is a little bit. I experienced some a couple of weeks ago with a taxi driver. For some reason he thought another taxi driver cut him off or didn't let him in or something. And he was getting a little nasty. I was going to get out of and stop him and get out of the taxi. But he eventually cooled down and we went on our way. I told him. I had a little discussion with him about that anyway. And that's another thing. As far as I often sit in the front when I can and have a conversation with the taxi drivers. But there are a few who speak. Many will say, "Oh, I don't speak only a little English," but I can have a very good conversation with them. Others who I try to strike up a conversation, and they truly are unable to hold a conversation or even understand very much English at all. Most do. Most do understand, but they're not comfortable. Some are not comfortable conversing. But I did a video, I don't know, a week or two ago about walking across the second bridge from Mandawi City to Mactan Island. And that taxi driver, I wanted him to drop me off near the water park on the Mandawi City side, and so I could walk across the bridge. And he passed that. I wasn't quite sure where the last cutoff was. He passed that, and now we're on the bridge. It's too late, so I had him go across, turn around, go all the way around, turn around, and what would have been 250 pesos, $5. What $5 was 350, $7, no big deal. But the fact it took that extra 20 minutes to go find a place to turn around over on Mactan Island and go back there. Sometimes, in fact, my very first taxi ride here, I was staying at my first hotel, Premier City Suites. I got into a taxi down by Fuentios Mini Circle, not very far at all. And I told him I wanted to go to Premier City Suites, and he kept repeating, City Suites, City Suites, City Suites. I said, no, Premier City Suites. And anyway, he dropped me off he took me up to City Suites, which isn't very far, but it's in the opposite direction. And so I decided, well, he's lost, and I'm lost, so I'll get out and try to find another taxi, or perhaps I'll walk. And I started walking, and to go maybe 1.5 kilometers, I probably walked 5 kilometers. Round in circles sometimes. I used Google Maps for a while, and it run me down some dead end roads, so it didn't help me out very much. But you will find some that do not understand. So be clear. Do you know where that's at? And if there aren't many addresses in street addresses, like there are no numbers on such and such street. So if you say, well, I'm going to such and such place on Ramos Street. Well, what's near? What's a cross street? What's another landmark there? That helps. Another good point, this is a cash society here pretty much. Some people are using digital payments now, like Gcash and Easy Pay, a number of different digital where you load, you go someplace, you put cash on your phone basically, and you pay somebody digitally. But it's pretty much a cash society. So if you only have big bills on you, 1,000 peso bills, 500 peso bills, good chance that your taxi driver or your tricycle driver, whatever, doesn't have change for that bill. So first thing you need to do is get some small bills. Now I've found there are certain stores, certain in the bigger cities, a lot of the larger popular chain pharmacies, go in and buy something and break a bill. A McDonald's or a Jollibee usually has change to break a bill. I always buy something, at least something, to break a bill. But even when I go the other day, when I went to buy something, we don't have any change. A little sorry store that sells a lot of stuff, and all I had, I think, was a 500 peso bill, $10 bill, and we don't have change. And it took about 10 minutes to go around to other stores, find somebody with change that they could get for me. Now, as far as law enforcement, unlike the U.S. and probably many other areas in the world, you don't have real visible traffic enforcers, police cars, police motorcycles around. You will see occasionally, one will say traffic on it. Cebu City in the last couple of years has hired a couple hundred more traffic enforcers, and they're standing on the side of the road, different places, and they're just waving people over, and they'll check your documents, or they might be standing at a corner waiting for people not to stop at a stoplight. And very few stoplights in the Cebu City metropolitan area. I don't know that I've ever seen a stop sign itself. Most of them are just courtesy type places. One side will give way, somebody puts their nose out there a little bit, so the oncoming traffic will give way. let some people go, and then the same thing happens the other direction. And I know some foreigners who drive over here, and they have a hard time with the driving situation, because people do things here, and they drive, and people will cut you off, and it's just it's more normal, and people are aware of it, even Filipinos, but they don't get upset like some of us. I think maybe Westerners, maybe Americans from the USA are the worst. I don't know about the other countries as far as just really getting upset about that type of thing, because we have so many rules and regulations. We expect everybody to obey them at all times, and if they aren't, that's the way it goes. I have a couple American friends, and I just recently found out that they have both had traffic citations recently. And what's very common here is if you can't make a left-hand turn, you make a right turn, you go down and do a U-turn, you come back, and one guy was pulled over for doing that, and because there was a yellow line, like a double yellow line, you aren't supposed to cross for passing, but he did. He said, "Well, I wasn't passing anybody. I was just doing a U-turn," but that didn't work. So forget what he said it cost him. Lots more bicycles out there, and a little bit of road rage because of that I've read about. Anyway, that's just a little bit. Looking forward to see your comments and your experiences here in the Philippines. Hopefully we can all travel soon again. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.